Joining us is Iqbal Athas, political editor of Sunday Times, with us here. Thank you so much, Iqbal Athas, for joining us here on Mirror Now. First off, what in your view right now, if you can take us through what the situation is? We've heard some voices on ground. We've seen the long lines of vehicles trying to fill up petrol, which is obviously not available. Where does Sri Lanka stand now?
Well, there is a difference since yesterday, I would say, because the Prime Minister, Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe, made a statement which was nationally televised, where he has made it very clear that things are going to become much more difficult than now, before things could improve. And he warned the Sri Lankans to brace themselves for such a situation. He also sort of identified some of the areas where sort of money is being dumped down the drain, so to say. Like, for example, the country's national carrier, the Sri Lankan Airlines, has been suffering immense losses over a period of time. He said it was his intention to privatize the organization. And he also spoke of his immediate priorities at the moment. And interesting enough, today in Parliament, he appears to have won a vote of confidence of sorts when they met. Originally, there were expectations that he might face a no confidence motion, and his president, Gotabaya Rajapaksa, would also meet a vote of censure. But the support for him emerged in the course of the ruling party MPs trying to stall the vote of censure. They wanted to suspend the standing orders, which, as you know, is the rules that govern the conduct of the House, and the government MPs outvoted that move. Now, the result of that exercise is that the censure motion would get back to the order book for 5 days and be listed for debate at any given time later on, and not today. And the vote in favor of rejecting the suspension of standing orders was 119, which is even beyond the 113 that is required in a 225-member parliament for such an exercise. Now, what this signifies is that Mr. Wickremesinghe is set to stay, and also he is set to go along with the course which he spelled out yesterday to revive the economy, which, as he says, is going to be an extremely challenging task.
Yes, absolutely. Iqbal Athas, request you to please stay on with us. I would like to go back to my colleague Padma, who's back with us as well at this point in time. Padma, all right, I think we've lost that line once again. We will try and reconnect. But Mr. Athas, coming back to you, of course, we've seen a change in leadership. This was something that people of Sri Lanka were demanding as well to try and ride out this crisis. But the anger, the frustration is still extremely evident. It's pouring out onto the streets. What can you tell us about life right now, daily life? Because everything from power to fuel to medicines, nothing is available.
Well, I have said this once before, it's going to worsen in the weeks and months to come. The reason is that we are still freewheeling on the goodwill of the government of India. We have still been receiving fuel supplies as a result of their generosity, I would say. And as a result, despite 5 and 6 hour power cuts, we still have our lights burning at night and also at daytime sometimes. But the question is, how long could this go on? Because at some point or the other, these supplies are going to dry up. And then medicinal drugs are not available. They are in short supply, and that's creating a very serious issue. And the cumulative result of all this is that the districts which produce vegetables and other food items out of Colombo, they are finding it difficult to transport them to Colombo. They don't have fuel. Children can't travel to schools. Schools remain closed. So, see a situation which continues to exacerbate over a period of time. I dread to think of the consequences it's going to pose on the Sri Lankans, who are already facing a very big burden over this matter.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, as far as the new leadership is concerned, Mr. Wickremesinghe is concerned, he's made a slew of announcements about power outages which could go on for 15 hours a day. A new relief budget is going to be announced, printing money to pay salaries, national airline to be sold to stem losses. But this is obviously all very short-term in nature, sort of like band-aid solutions for the time being. Is there any plan that he has for the long term? How is Sri Lanka going to come out of this crisis?
Well, there are two aspects one has to take to heart when we discuss this issue. One is, as a result of Mr. Wickremesinghe's statement yesterday, something which was never known has come to light. That is the fact that over a period of time, the previous Rajapaksa administration has been hiding the truth from the people of Sri Lanka. They have not told the public the real economic situation. So now that the facts have become very clear, it is known that the government has turned to the IMF for a debt rescheduling, and they say that it would take anything between 6 to 9 months. So in this interim period, there is definitely going to be hardships. So whoever takes on the reins of power, there is no magic remedy for this. And unfortunately, a lot of people are going to face it. And the worst are the people who are starving.
Yes.
Who have no means of finding their daily meal.
Yes, yes, absolutely, Mr. Athas. Let me also bring in Padma, who's with us as well. Padma, if my voice is reaching you, we were just understanding from Mr. Iqbal Athas the situation at this point, and the daily things which are becoming extremely difficult for people to go about and carry on with their daily lives right now. In terms of what you're seeing on the streets, the anger that's spilling onto the streets, what more can you tell us about what people want?
Well, what people want.
That's
What people want.
Yes,
is the question for me
yes,
or for
Padma, the
Iqbal?
question for you. Please go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we've been, out on the streets, as you rightfully pointed out, and we have also been going into areas of Colombo, which are middle class areas, where there are working class people, daily wagers who live. And they say that where there are working class people, daily wagers who live. And they say that, even the daily wages that they were. And they say that even the daily wages that they're earning are not, freely available now, because many companies have just stopped functioning because of lack of petrol, lack of diesel, lack of gas, and even firewood, with which many people are cooking, has become very expensive. They can't afford it. And in fact, we are just coming from Colombo 3, which is a relatively affluent area in Colombo. There were absolutely long gas cylinder queues where people have been waiting for 5 days. And they say that they are getting irritated and
All right, that was Padma there giving us a sense, but I'm afraid the connection is a little weak. Let me go back to our guest who is still with us. Mr. Athas, of course, the timing of this sort of exacerbates the situation even more, because just as, the world is sort of trying to come out of the pandemic where it had a huge repercussion and impact on various economies, Sri Lanka is obviously facing all of this. Can you just, for our viewers, give us a sense of how all of this started and the reasons that led up to this point where Sri Lanka is right now?
Obviously, if one is to describe it in one word, it was just a case of absolute mismanagement. And now we know that a number of rating agencies are explaining that just ahead of the previous parliamentary elections, certain taxes were reduced. And when they came out to point out that these would have far-reaching repercussions on the economy, there were senior officials in the central bank, particularly the governor of the central bank, who was then only a chartered accountant, and he kept on contradicting them and saying that they were wrong and that he was right. So it took the president a number of months to realize that, number one, that he was being misdirected. Number two, the damage to the economy has been done. So what we are facing now is part of the blunder that has been caused by that.
Right. Now, in terms of, help that Sri Lanka is receiving from other countries, including India, what else sort of can be done at this point in time? Because the only way, at least to tide over this time, seems to be aid from India and others.
Well, Well, two priority areas, if you ask me, I would say is one is the cooking gas, as your correspondent was saying. Now, in most parts of the Colombo, you will notice that high-rise apartments have come up, and those high-rise apartments have provisions for kitchens which do not have any area for cooking with wood or wood, so to say. And the other is they cannot use electric cookers because there are power cuts. So the result is they have to turn to food from restaurants and smaller shops. They can't do that because they have closed down because they don't have the cooking the gas themselves. So this is one of the reasons why public anger is so much on the displayed in the streets or different parts of Colombo, where people have placed rows and rows of gas cylinders on the across the streets, and they are demanding that they be given gas, and the gas is not available. And among those who could afford, there is no petrol. The minister in charge of petroleum says that don't go to the sheds, we will not be open for 3 days because there is no petrol to give. So all this shows that over a period of time, there have been very bad planning. And other than the long-term impact, the immediate impact on the people have been devastating.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, absolutely. In terms of, some of the announcements that have been made by the new leadership over, the printing of money to pay salaries, the privatization of the national airline, what is the feasibility of all this? Because, in terms of printing of money, obviously that is going to further exacerbate the situation, but there perhaps may not be any other option at this point.
Indeed, in fact, it was shocking when the Prime Minister came out to say that he had never been in favor of printing money. And it had come to light that the former Minister of Finance, Mr. Basil Rajapaksa, who is the brother of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, has resorted to the printing of money. And newspaper reports have spoken of how at one stage, instead of focusing on the economy, he was focusing on the conduct of an election, using this printed money to buy votes and come back to power before moving into the economic sector to bring in improvements.
Mm-hmm. Right. Mr. Athas, just to get a sense as well, what kind of costing are we looking at when it comes to daily essentials, food, milk, bread, fuel? Of course, we know the petrol is not even available, let alone anything else. But just trying to understand the life of a Sri Lankan right now.
Well, it's very difficult at the moment, even for the authorities, for the simple reason that a costing now means that they have to start from zero. Now, if it's a case of transporting some stocks from here to the hill capital of Kandy, you've got to start from scratch. There are no transport services operating, which means you've got to make provision for that. And then from where are you going to get them? How long would it take to reach the port of Colombo? All these factors have to come in. And whatever is coming in is not enough to meet the needs. Like, for example, the government of Tamil Nadu have reacted praiseworthily to the recent developments. They have sent in food supplies and so on, despite the level of estrangement that have prevailed between Sri Lanka and those in Tamil Nadu. But nevertheless, the volume that is coming in is hardly sufficient. I mean, I'm not blaming them, but this is the state at the moment.
Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, thank you very much, Mr. Athas, for joining us with your perspective and for giving us an understanding of the situation in Sri Lanka at this point in time.